we watched Man Who Would Be King. I watched it a second time. And
Nice.
yeah, there's that scene where they discover Sikandar's treasure. So Alexander's treasure, and there's a room just decked out with giant rubies, and there's this great scene where it's just a room full of like glittering, glorious treasure. And when I was a little boy, I was obsessed with treasure. I had a little treasure chest, and I wanted to fill it with whatever shiny shit, whatever glittery shit, and sort of stuff like that I could get my hands on. It. My parents used to call me like Magpie. I was obsessed with treasure, and
Oy vey.
I think that's quite natural for a young a kid, because I think that there's got to be an unconscious link between the acquisition of treasure and the understanding of the power of treasure and money and power and attractiveness and things like this. You know, if you get your hands on treasure when you're young, you know, you do something, you become an adventurer, or you do what it takes to get treasure, you're suddenly standing above the whole of the society. You know, in The Man Who Would Be King, they said they would have been the richest men in England all of a sudden, you know, if they got to take that home. And I was thinking, what philosophy would I want to teach my boys when I'm playing them this exact DVD that I've got of Man Who Would Be King? When I put that on and they watch it and they're fixated on the treasure, what do you teach your boys? What do you tell them?
I had a healthy measure of hands off and, you know, good counsel and advice at various times. But I often rejected the good counsel and advice. And it's only now that I really see the merits of some of that advice. And, you know, I even remember some of it when it's almost impossible that I do. And, you know, I never really applied it. So, but equally, I don't know. In a way, I like the idea of situational training, and rather than saying, you know, saying to my son, "Oh, this is how you should act. This is how you do." It'd be almost to like create a little sort of play event which acts out in a way. You know, so when you were thinking of the treasure, I was thinking, oh, you know what I would do? I'd bury something in the garden so that, you know, when my kids were like playing in the mud, they could like find something in the garden, and they could run up to me and go, Dad, oh my God, look what I've just found. Oh my God. And I could be like, we're rich. You say, or whatever it was, you saved us. And, you know, because I imagine in a way that kind of experience-based thing would be way more, you know, memorable. It just sounds fun as well. Like when I was, it just sounds fun, and I think, you know, because here's this thing. I have a problem at the moment with people. I call them you shoulders, which means you should, and it's people that say to you all the time, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this." Mate, it actually drives me fucking insane. So I like that the idea of putting my son in situations where the message or the idea that I want him to carry on, the trait that I want him to have, is kind of he experiences it firsthand and it sees the virtue of it himself and adopts it himself.
Yeah. When you say you shoulders, I think of shit kickers in kickboxing who give you instructions on how to kick when they can't kick for shit, and you're like, oh well, because you're actually humble and willing to learn from anywhere. You're like, huh, well, I'll have to think about that one, bro. Like, I'm not so sure, honestly, because that looked like it was an awful kick. but I will have to give that some consideration, and maybe I will kick a little bit more like that, or at least consider its virtues. You know, but it's like people get so out of step with reality, and that's probably an extremely easy thing for a father to do, as the times have changed a whole generation since when you were a boy, and now your boys are growing into men. A whole, all the way back then you were, and the things that work for you may not work for them, but there are some lessons that are timeless. But it is
Yeah.
something that you've probably got to monitor heavily, is what advice you're giving and how you're giving it, because it's so hard to keep in with the times, really, isn't it? Just aside from being a complete egomaniac, or being out of step with reality, or being delusional about your own abilities, or disconnected, or whatever else it is, just the time is a huge factor. The boomer confidence of, you just go to school and get a job and it's all taken care of, like buy a house and the house pre it's just not this, we're just not living in the same world as that in the slightest, you know
Yeah.
but they won't even, they can't see it. They will not look at that for what it is, because it's too destructive to their egos, that the fun times that they've had have led to a far worse time for their children. It's too on the chin, too on the nose.
And that's so interesting because I fucking listen to these boomers talk about politics and they can't understand where I'm coming from. It's just like, yeah, because you had it so good and you think you're kind of naive to the fact that those times are never coming back. And even if you want a remote sort of look at them, we've got to get serious. And I mean so serious.
Yeah, they were wrong about so much, and the decline says so much about them that they refuse to see the decline.
Yeah.
So back to treasure. Um,
That is what you are.
Treasure. Yeah. I learned from anywhere, and there was this podcast that I was watching maybe 4 or 5 years ago or something, with Logan Paul, Jake Paul, and their father. I don't know, Greg, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And he was talking about two of the things that he did in raising his boys, who obviously became hyper successful. Um, One of the things that he mentioned was he would, in like summertime, force them to do decluttering, sort of going to people's houses and seeing these hoarders, and cleaning out all of the shit in their in their bathrooms, and like gunk on the floor, and all this horrible shit, for a little bit of money that he wouldn't even give to them at the time, he put away, or something like that.
Mm.
And this taught them a work ethic, and gave them a little bit of treasure put away.
We were 10 years old, 12 years old. Dad's like, come on, we're going to work.
Bro.
And yo, you see the show Hoarders on TV? These are the houses we were cleaning. I remember some of the gunk I'd have to scrape out of corners.
Right.
Disgusting.
We would go so hard.
Hard as fuck.
And
You guys
we
did.
would work so fast through those houses. It would take us like two days max, 12 hours,
Yeah.
14-hour days.
Well, because I wanted them to learn the work ethic, because I knew that if they had the work ethic, no matter what happens in their life, no matter what shitstorm comes up to them, no matter how deep the mud is, they're going to fucking get out. They're going to keep plugging forward, and they're going to succeed and make it.
I've said this before. That's the secret. Like, how'd you do it? I literally will outwork everyone. Like it's just the work ethic. So as fucking, I'll use the word like horrible, and as much as I didn't like it back then, it's probably the core reason why I am where I am.
So that's just one sort of side point. I've got another thing, and then maybe I'll be able to connect it. So in The Man Who Would Be King, they find the crown of Sikander, and what's his name?
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Michael Caine licks the crown, and he says, "That's not brass, Peachy." And to me, what he's saying there is all that glitters is not gold. Just because it's shiny doesn't mean that it's gold. However, this crown is gold, and everything in this room is real treasure. And so I wonder if when I was a little kid, I had a big box of treasures that weren't really treasure. There was probably like a bit of tinsel and like all types of random fake non-treasure shit. I wonder if my kid's obsessed with treasure, should I get him a tiny little treasure chest and say, if you want to fill this up, we can fill it with real treasure. That because gold, silver, that type of thing, it don't lose its worth, it stays what it's worth, and so it can go to, their education when they're older. It can go to whatever they want when they're older. But to get real treasure, you're gonna have to put in real work. So put in some real work, and we'll get you real treasure. That you put in that chest isn't treasure. I wonder if something like that could be possible.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah.
Because if a kid manages to take a work ethic and manages to hold treasure, then they're going to have options and they're going to spread my DNA. They're going to continue my family, because they have this behind them. But there's the other problem of these guys who are all about getting that money and they don't have a work ethic, and they are, like their idea of success, like you see it a lot in places like Wellingborough, their idea of success is like posting Andrew Tate with a quote like "I'm a lion" or something like that, like this type of thing, and like they're just very, very confused about it all, but very strong in doing nothing. It's that balance between understanding the nature of the world. There is treasure out there. It's rare. It's hard to find. There's other ways of finding treasure. Life's not all about that. But a good part of life is about that. And you can do well, but you have to get on it. It's like a whole sort of set of early trainings, really, isn't it? It's quite a hard balance to strike.